Hello and welcome back to part 3 of our election night coverage here from LSUTV, live from the LSUTV studios at Loughborough Students Union. Our brand new studios renovated recently. Very proud of them, using them again for this studio event here today. With me in the studio are Josh Thompson still, Amie Woodyatt, and to my right, Chris Leroux. Let's first initially go to the news of Speaker Hoyle. Lindsay Hoyle has been re-elected to his seat. Not a surprise there, but it's good to see. We've got a new speaker. John Bercow's reign as speaker for 10 years almost is over now, and we have Lindsay Hoyle taking over. Guys, what's your thoughts about this?
I'm honestly, I haven't really been keeping up to date with how she's been doing, as I don't watch.
She's male.
And there you go,
that's the first part I'll go for. Yeah.
It's that time of the night now.
It is that time of the night.
Yeah, Lindsay Hoyle.
But also, I don't watch Parliament every day of my life, so I'm not really too involved with watching it very much, and therefore, honestly, can make a judge on how they are as a speaker.
We've had a gain for the Labour Party in Putney. Labour's Fleur Anderson gains Putney from the Conservatives. The seat had formerly been held by Justine Greening, who decided not to run at this election. Obviously, the results are still coming in, and I haven't got full details, but I've just got this off my Twitter. What?
I think, we're always expecting at some point the Conservative Party to lose a seat and the Labour to make gains. I think the overall picture is the important thing. Maybe not exactly, not every seat will be portrayed in the exact same way as others. And you'll have seats like Putney where actually things are going in a different way. However, Lee, Conservatives have gained the seat from Labour. We've also got another gain in... I'm trying to find this one again, I've lost it. We're actually gaining Angus, where the SNP have gained from the Conservatives, where Kirsten Hare has lost her seat to Dave Dugan of the SNP in Angus. So, it's not a picture that's universal. I think we are seeing there are some chinks in the Tory party's armour this evening. But I think on the grand scheme of things and the overall picture, actually, we've got a Conservative gains coming across the room. And in fact, another one has just come in as well.
Yeah, they're coming in quick and fast now. Yeah. And go back to your point about Lee. A 9K majority for Labour has been wiped out, and Conservative taken that from them. So significant results coming out of there. But I think echoing on your last point, this again shows the polarisation of politics in the UK. We've got at a regional level as well. We've got Scotland going in favour of the SNP almost in total if projections hold. England perhaps being a more Brexit-focused thing, and we're still waiting to hear kind of results from Wales as well, because that could be really interesting. Because
moving on to another country as well, Northern Ireland, we've not talked about once this evening. I think people in England often forget about Northern Ireland, actually the significance that Northern Ireland parties have.
And with the issues of the backstop, of course, as well.
Exactly, and a big change here is the Alliance Party of Northern Ireland made a gain from an independent candidate, which is rather significant, as the Alliance Party are the kind of the joint party of the Liberal Democrats in the UK. So what you've got here is essentially almost what you would call a Lib Dem gain in North Down in Northern Ireland. So, you're getting this kind of mixed picture across the country. In Wrexham, Warre away, the Conservatives gained from Labour. Sarah Atherton has beaten Mary Wimbury with a majority of 2,000, which is a proper switch over from what Wrexham used to be. Again, an area which you would class as a traditional Labour stronghold, really, Wrexham. In Wales, in North Wales, next to North Wales, and Peterborough. Peterborough has changed from Conservative to Labour as well. All of these seats. Vale of Clwyd has gone from Conservative from Labour as well. All of these seats over the last half an hour have changed. And we've got a significant one here for Leicester, for a local seat. Leicester East has been held by Labour. A new candidate here, not returning MP, Claudia Webb, has retained her seat in Leicester East.
Back on to Lee, I think it's another time for the swingometer.
The swingometer!
So this one is an even bigger swing than before. This swing to the Conservative Party is 12%, which is about there. That 12.3%, that's a huge swing to the Conservative Party. And I think it's just a reflection of tonight. Hopefully, I can't go any further down the swingometer, because if that is not the biggest swing, I will have to go like this, and that's not great.
So Labour have held this seat in Greater Manchester for a long time. We're going to have a little guess here around the studio of how long you think Labour have held the seat of Lee in Greater Manchester for. We'll go around. Josh, how long do you think?
I'm going to go 35 years.
I mean, is this something that, is kind of like, oh...
How long have Labour held Lee?
Okay, I'm going to try and top
Quickly,
that.
come on.
I'm going to try and top that with 40 years. 40
years.
101 years.
98 years. Last time Lee was held by a party other than Labour was in 1922. It's now been held by the Conservatives on a majority of 448.
Another point on Wrexham, what has been, it's a town that's surrounded by coal mines, steelworks. There's nowhere probably more working class and historically in favour of Labour. Conservatives have gained this, and they now have a 2,000 majority there. I mean, it's really quite unprecedented what's happening tonight. And this goes back to what we've been talking about for most of the night, really. Do we think it's an issue of the stance of Brexit, or is it an issue of leadership, or are we seeing that maybe issues, kind of national issues, aren't being received as well?
I think. Sorry to butt in there.
No,
I think
go for
also
it.
something quite interesting. Sarah Atherton was the first female to be, not elected, chosen. The votes have shown that she's in the seat now. So she was the first woman for the Conservatives to be shown to win her seat this evening. So
We've got a second just in Fareham. Suella Braverman has just won her seat and held her seat in Fareham there. So you're getting these increases in seats and these changes here across the country, and a big one for those politicos out there. I'm sure there's a couple of you still watching this late at night. Kenneth Clarke's old seat. He was the father of the House, the member of Parliament who'd been serving for the longest period of time. He'd been serving since 1970. And he'd become an independent in more recent times after he fell out with the leadership of the Conservative Party under Boris Johnson. That seat has been won by the Conservatives. Ruth Edwards, although with a slightly reduced majority. So that not every seat is consistently showing that the Conservative Party are making gains. In seats they're holding, they're not doing as well as seats, as you might understand, than seats where Labour are often the current or the former dominant party. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Loughborough later on in a seat which is currently a Labour stronghold, has been for 9 years. But we'll just see how that plays out, and actually if people who are dissatisfied with the Conservative Party have their play their part in the election.
I think another interesting point tonight that is being felt is the influence of Nigel Farage's decision to not stand Brexit Party candidates in Conservative-held seats. We've already seen quite a big split in the vote, with the Tory vote being down in some Labour seats and Brexit Party vote being up. I mean, nationally we're seeing that the vote's up by about 14%, of course, but that is because they're a new party in this election. However, the issue of leave for Labour, they're being hammered in, but also in Remain seats, we're seeing that in some Remain seats that numbers are down by about 5-6 points. So clearly there's still issues with, this is where it's Brexit v leadership, and maybe perhaps in Remain areas where Brexit, is of course an issue, but maybe they're not voting so passionately for, they're seeing a leadership issue and voting more based on leader of the party rather than maybe policy. And this goes back to Pooh's comments of this election perhaps being more a US styled, where we haven't seen many of the front benchers from either sides, I'd say. And it's just been kind of a face-off between two figureheads of two parties, similar to how we've had with Trump. And perhaps that's what we're starting to see more now with the growth of rallies and them trying to kind of portray it as a big event.
So I think it's interesting to see, looking at how this develops, is in the future to see whether or not the age of voters has impacted how we have come to this, and whether or not young people have come out to vote as much as they necessarily have in Loughborough and university towns. And I think that especially impacts here because we have a student who's been running, Wes Walton, for the Green Party. And I think we might have him with Paul down in the leisure centre. Hello, Paul.
Hello, I am here with the Green Party candidate, Wes Walton. You are a student at Loughborough University and you're running for Parliament. How's that been?
It's been exciting, is all I can say. It's been an interesting couple of weeks, to be honest.
So how are you feeling about how the entire campaign's gone?
It's gone well. I've enjoyed doing it. It's probably the key thing. Chances of winning weren't great to begin with, but you know, I've enjoyed it.
If you had won, or well, we don't know if you have, you might have won. What would happen?
Well, I'd be off to Parliament, wouldn't I, and have to call my degree quits. So, might have considered Open University because you can give credits over, but you know, I don't know.
So the exit polls are out now. We're still not expecting results for Loughborough or Charnwood until about 4:30. How are you feeling about the Green Party's chances nationwide?
Nationwide, I know there are a few areas we've been targeting. Bristol West and Isle of Wight. Obviously, Brighton we should maintain. But our chances nationwide aren't looking too shabby, all things considered. And hopefully we'll get 1 or 2 extra seats.
Yeah, it's obviously early days, but the vote share for Greens has gone up nationally, so that's an advantage for you. What has been the Green target for this election?
The Green target has really been to show that we mean business and to increase our vote share, more or less.
And on a personal level, obviously being a student yourself, very in touch with the student population, how do you think the students of Loughborough University have engaged with this election?
I think it's just been amazing how people have engaged. I mean, I've been on nights out and people have gone up to me and gone, "Oh, you're a Green Party candidate. I might not be voting for you this time, but I'm voting Labour or this and that." And it's just been fantastic. I mean, turnout at the polling station today was amazing compared to last time round. I think last time round they said about 40 people turned up. There were a lot more people this time round.
Yeah, definitely. And you see like the all of the meme pages, there's just all of the election is basically dominating it. So it's good that you have young people turning out in force.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Unfortunately, young people tend to vote Labour, Green, Lib Dem, and we might not be getting the result we want tonight, but at least we've turned out today.
Exactly, and it's a good building block. You know, if for any party that whether you increase your seat number or not, if you're increasing your vote share, you're getting more out there. So, would you say at this stage that it's a win for Green this election, or could you think maybe better?
To say it's a win, given the exit poll, is, I think, not missing what the Greens stand for, and it's that radical environmental change which we need, and the Tories don't have the best record on it. So it's a win. Our vote share has increased, but whether it's a win for the country is yet to be seen.
Of course. Would you recommend to any students out there who are very interested in politics? Well, what would you recommend they do if you're a student out there watching right now who is incredibly interested in politics? What would you say? What would you recommend for them to do? Seriously,
Join your local party. I know Greens and Labour have fantastic just outreach with the youth. I joined about three years ago and went from being just slightly involved in my local party to being the East Midlands Young Greens co-chair to standing in an election. So it's been a fantastic ride.
Would you recommend any student to stand as an MP?
Yes. It's something to add to the CV. Hustings is an interesting experience and is just like no other thing I've done at university so far, and would wholeheartedly recommend it because you're getting involved. Yeah.
Well, that is perfect. And one final question. You mentioned hustings. Who are you more scared of, Josh Gray or Jeremy Paxman?
Gotta go Jeremy Paxman. He's terrifying.
Well, over to you, Josh Gray.
Oh, I'm not terrifying. I think I'm a little bear at heart, However, we've got some significant results and significant information about Charnwood and the local count with Chris.
Yes. So, Charnwood Borough Council have recently put out there that the turnout for Loughborough is 68.8%, which I think is interesting to see. That it's slightly above the average nationally. So, what do you think? Do you think that will have an impact on the vote?
I hope that it's more young people going out to vote. That's going to be a big thing for me tonight. I think it might be interesting to see if the demographic has changed what that vote is. But then again, talking to a lot of people, I think a kind of big, I was going to say stereotype, it's not a stereotype at all. Young people generally vote Labour, Lib Dem. Mm-hmm. But a lot of people I have talked to are not necessarily voting Labour, but voting other parties. So I think it will be quite interesting to see what we go out and vote. If we've got more people going out and vote, that's absolutely brilliant. But to actually see what they've been voting for will be quite interesting, I think.
Well, we've had some big results in the last few minutes while we were over there speaking to Wes. Clwyd South, we had a result from Clwyd today, which is a change as well to Labour. Clwyd South has been a Conservative gain from Labour, which means Clwyd itself only one seat more for the Tories to get, and then they've got the Clwyd trio. Of all 3 seats there, that's Simon Barnes taking a seat away from Susan Ellen Jones with a majority of 1,239. Big one for young people. Paisley and Renfrewshire South. This was the youngest MP, I believe, of all time in 2015. Mary Black, who won the seat then. She has come back with an increased majority of 10,600, bearing in mind that she won that seat not expecting to. Just over 4 years ago today. 4 years ago this was a solid Labour seat. She now has a majority of 10,600 and will potentially, looking at the exit poll, remain an MP for the next 5 years. And that's something that you wouldn't expect. If you ran as an opportunistic candidate in a seat you never expected to win, and you've now been the MP, well, you will potentially be the MP for 9 years.
Yeah, and what that carries with it is a significant amount of responsibility. So clearly, if people have voted on local issues or on the national agenda, then there might be implications for that. Another really quite significant one for a party leader. Eastern Bartonshire, obviously, is the seat of the Lib Dem leader. Western Bartonshire has just been held by the SNP with increased majority and a swing of 6.7% from Labour to the SNP. Obviously, it was a SNP seat in the first place, but this is not a great sign for the Lib Dems leader. She may be losing her seat later this evening. Yeah, and talking about their proposed revival in this election, it doesn't look like that's materialising tonight at all. So it looks like we're staying with two-party politics in the UK.
Do you think that that's something that Lib Dems can counteract? Was it their message of stopping Brexit? Was that just too harsh?
I think maybe it's a case of people are just fed up with Brexit, and their message of wanting to revoke Article 50 and stay in the EU. Clearly, people think that's just going to cause more division, perhaps, or it's a case of they're fed up after two and a half years of nothing really happening in this country, and have now treated it the only way out of this, and perhaps to fix the national agenda, they're going to vote for Conservative, because if they vote for Labour, then maybe that's going to split the vote even further. We might have further implications for Remain, and just the uncertainty for people, especially businesses. I think people are just fed up with it.
I think a part of this core problem for Labour and the Lib Dems in terms of gaining these seats back is Scotland, where the Lib Dems and the Labour Party have done historically very, very well. Currently, the Labour have lost 1 seat and the Conservatives have lost 1 seat. Out of 5 seats declared in Scotland, all 5 so far are SNP seats. It would not surprise me if you see almost every single seat in Scotland being taken up by the SNP, a nationalist party, for those of you not aware, that want to leave the UK and have Scotland as an independent country. What does this mean for the future of the country?
Well, looking at polling data in terms of those who want to leave or remain part of the United Kingdom, it seems that they still want to be part of the UK, which I think is bizarre considering they're voting the SNP. But you could argue that the SNP are perhaps, rather than pushing their agenda of Scottish independence, it's the sort of Scottish pride and almost like Scotland first that is driving the vote towards the SNP, as well as perhaps the feeling in Scotland that the SNP represent the Scottish people more than the Labour Party, which used to hold its safe seats there.
But do you think that's because Scotland voted Remain and they want to stay in the EU?
I think it's hard to say. I think a large part of it could be considered to be part of Brexit, but I don't necessarily think that that's the deciding factor in SNP's victories since 2015, since before the referendum was announced. I think that it's not about Brexit. Brexit is perhaps part of it, but I don't think that's the key factor with the SNP's glorious reign over Scotland.
I think as well, if you look at Labour in Scotland, their performance has not been good, but nationally, there is only one seat so far in the entire country, out of the 30 or 40 or so that have been declared or are looking to be declared, where they've had a majority, they've had an increased percentage of the vote. That's one seat. That was Birkenhead, and that increase was under 1%. Every other seat across the country, they have had a majority that's decreased in every seat where they were the party in power. But it's not only about the national picture, of course, it's the local picture too. And here at Loughborough, Josh went down earlier and had a look at what the Loughborough students were experiencing at their polling station.
Hello and welcome to a rather cold and wet afternoon here in Loughborough, as polling is currently underway with loads of students casting their vote in what has been dubbed the Brexit election. Loughborough has been emphasised as a key constituency for both Conservative and Labour, with it being labelled as a battleground in this election. The Loughborough constituency has flipped between Labour and Conservative over the past 50 years. In 2017, Nicky Morgan's majority was more than halved, in part due to a greater turnout in young voters. This year, with a new Conservative candidate from the constituency and increasing political engagement from young voters, could we see Loughborough turn red? Here in Loughborough, the turnout of the student population could be influential in determining who becomes the MP for this constituency. However, with this being the end of term, the impact of this is still yet to be seen. With Brexit being a crucial topic in this election, parties' stance on Brexit could prove key in Loughborough, with Charnwood having voted in favour of leave by 53.8% in 2016. With this being a winter election and today's weather being notably poor, this could have further implications for turnout today. This has been Josh Thompson reporting for LSUTV in Loughborough.
Well, there you go. Those are the conditions that you saw in Loughborough today. A very interesting weather dynamic in this winter election. We've not had one for almost a century now. How do you think that winter dynamic and that wet weather, the cold, the damp, the dark mornings and the dark evenings is really affecting this election?
Well, I can tell you from going out there with Chris earlier, it was miserable standing out there, absolutely freezing. So if voters are, sitting on the fence of whether they're feeling up for voting or whether they take an active interest in politics, it could swing a few voters to say, look, my vote's not. People might say that they don't feel their vote counts or anything, so therefore they're just going to stay at home.
See, it doesn't seem that the rain or the poor weather or the dark nights has affected the voter turnout. Perhaps it would have been a much larger increase in voter turnout if the weather wasn't so poor. In fact, I think I can still hear the rain in here. But I don't think it's had an impact on a normal election. Perhaps this election may have had a greater turnout if the rain wasn't here. But again, when I was out there with Josh, we saw loads of people walk up to the polling station. It wasn't like polling stations of local elections when you stand in there and you're the only one in this huge hall where nobody's voting. So I think that we might even see a increase in voter turnout.
Labour have had an interesting few developments over the last few minutes. Jeremy Corbyn has arrived at his county in Islington, and at the same time, very senior figure of Momentum, John Landsman, has said to Nick Ardley, the BBC, that if Corbyn goes, there should be a leadership election in the spring. These are Momentum activists, senior Momentum activists, contemplating the fact that Jeremy Corbyn's time as the Labour leader might very well be near the end. He's not going to lose his seat. That's not going to happen unless, for some reason, the demographics of Islington change drastically over the last 2 years. However, he may have an Ed Miliband moment where he has to stand in a room and tell everyone that he's no longer the leader suitable for his party. The question will be, who will take over? Will it be, the hard left of the Labour Party? Will it be Momentum? They've got a lot of grassroots supporters, and at the end of the day, it is a grassroots and union-based vote. Or will it be someone more centrist, more of a Keir Starmer figure, that can really get maybe Labour back on track again?
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned the issue with Momentum. Like, they were the grassroots campaigning organisation that kind of propelled Jeremy Corbyn to the forefront of the Labour Party, and without their support, he probably wouldn't be in the position he is. And whether that would have consequences of where Labour stand tonight, we'll never know. But it's interesting you talk about Labour candidates launching leadership bids. Trending on social media, Jess Phillips, people may be expecting her to make a move on whether she'll become the next leader of the Labour Party. And it's worth noting that Labour has never had a female leader, and there's a feeling that, in some quarters at least, that this needs to change. It's possible as well, people like Keir Starmer, Jess Phillips, Emily Thornberry, whether it's Jeremy Corbyn as the figurehead was what drove voters away, or whether it's something else. We'll have to find out.
It's very interesting though that that this Momentum movement that pushed Labour forward into a potential resurging hard left party, with strong principles about renationalisation and other such principles. Has actually kind of been, has come undone and has led to his undoing in the same way.
Yeah, and like I said before, this is the manifesto that Jeremy Corbyn has always wanted. And I think figures in the Momentum organisation have said that at a grassroots level, the policies of Labour's manifesto have been really popular, but that hasn't translated into support that they were hoping for. So there seems to be something that's been lost in translation here. If voters are saying they're supporting in policies, but they're not going out to vote for them, then what's the real issue here? And personally, I think it's Brexit.
And obviously, with this Brexit issue, another party which is now struggling based on their own Brexit stance are the Liberal Democrats.
Which is interesting because they've said, or they've always tried to be really clear with their message as opposed to the Labour Party. But it seems like their vote count has dropped as well, and potential of Jo Swinson losing her seat, which could throw up another leadership contest for them. Who knows?
And potential Prime Minister to potential MP. That's a huge swing in a couple of weeks.
And let's remember there was talk of an upset for Boris Johnson's seat. So that'll be an interesting one to watch to see the swing of that, because Liberal Democrat supporters there were hoping for a major upset, but based on what we're seeing at the moment, probably not going to be the case.
Yeah, I've just been, as you guys have been talking, was trailing through the amount of tweets that are coming through. And Alistair Campbell's been on the BBC. Alistair Campbell, known as the spin doctor of the Labour Party during the Blair years, has said that this is not just a defeat for Jeremy Corbyn, this is a defeat for the politics that he represents. Does this, in the context of the Labour Party leadership, see the end of true left-wing politics in this country?
And as you're saying that, in the last 2 minutes, the Conservative Party have now overtaken the Labour Party for the first time this evening, and now have more seats than the Labour Party. It'd be interesting to see whether when this cycle returns and the Labour Party have another boost again. But it may potentially be that this is the last time this evening that we see the Conservative Party behind the Labour Party. The Conservative Party now have 41 seats, and the Labour Party with 39 seats. That's a change of 4 and 4 for either party.
And it's interesting that you say that, because literally as he was saying that, it changed. So Labour and the Conservatives are now both on 45.
Yeah. We've just had a result in from Westmoreland and Lonsdale. Tim Farron looks like has held on to his seat, perhaps with a shorter majority of only 1,900.
I'm going to say that's probably an unlikely contender for the new Liberal Democrat leadership. Should Joe Swinson,
yeah,
I don't think he's going to want to go back into that kind of job.
An interesting result, nonetheless.
Interesting to see if he's got an interesting swing there. We'll have a look into that.
But interesting stat that's just come up. If Boris Johnson were to run the full term of 5 years, I mean, we've had quite a few elections in the past few years, so who knows what's going to happen. It will be 50 years since any Labour leader other than Tony Blair has won a majority. 50 years.
But again, you can look at the other direction and say that tonight's result has not been since the Thatcher years. So again, I think we are kind of breaking history today. We're also breaking history again, kind of for the first time in modern history, where the opposition party's not gained seats, or does not look like they're going to gain seats, and that's a very significant pattern. That, for the last 100 or so years, if you are the main party in opposition, you gain seats. Yeah. That is what happens. Although, it was very mediocre under Ed Miliband and under Jeremy Corbyn last time, they did gain seats, they did gain MPs. Not many, but they did. This time, they may lose seats. This does not happen in British politics.
No, and for those who wanted to remain in the EU, any kind of opposition to that has just been decimated tonight. So.
Interestingly, though, the Liberal Democrats candidate, Tim Farron, has increased his majority by over 1,000 votes in his seat. He did have 777 majority in 2017. He now has a majority of 1,900.
Do we know the votership for the EU referendum in that seat, though?
In Westmoreland and Lonsdale, it was 47% to leave, so 53% to remain.
Possible interesting dynamic there. Yeah, but I think Chris raised a really interesting point that I'd quite like to come back to, of your view of perhaps socialism in this country not being voted for. Do you think, therefore, we're seeing, perhaps we might see a movement back to the centre ground, perhaps?
I think we need to be careful with, obviously, the predictions. I merely posed the question. I didn't necessarily say that.
No,
this
of
was
course.
the case.
I'm just curious as to what you might think. Yeah.
I think I don't necessarily think this is a return to the centre ground, but I do think that you could argue that the swing from the Labour Party to the left has scared a lot of previous Labour voters, especially those such as my family, who are quite a relatively young family, who have only really remembered the Blair years and the end of the Conservative era under Thatcher and Major. I got that one. So I think a lot of people are wanting the Labour Party to move to the centre because centre ground parties, catch-all parties, more people are willing to join those parties and vote for those parties when they apply to more people. I think that there could be arguments either way. You could say that, well, it's better for a party to actually represent something rather than trying to encompass all. But I don't know.
There's some big results that have now just come through as well. The major one being a huge blow to the Labour Party here in Chingford and Woodford Green, the seat of Ian Duncan Smith, the former Tory leader and party grandee, some would say. He has held on to his seat with a reduced majority, but he has held on to his seat with 48.5% of the vote, which is around what he had last time. It's very, very close. Nottingham South, a local seat for us here in Loughborough. That's been a Labour hold with an increased majority. Canterbury, a seat that was gained in 2015 in the most unexpected fashion down in Kent, where you don't expect to see any Labour voters, let alone Labour seats. He's had an increased majority there as well of 3.3%, swing away from the Conservative Party and the Lib Dems to the Labour Party. Interestingly, if the Lib Dems hadn't have lost votes in this constituency, the Conservative Party would have taken Canterbury. So maybe that's a case of tactical voting playing its part there. But Canterbury, a seat that no one really expected to become a Labour seat back in 2017, has been retained by Labour.
Yeah, and news just in as well, Battersea, Labour have held on to that with a majority of 5,600. Some of the scenes on social media this morning were of the enormous queues at polling stations across London. It looks like voter turnout has been up compared to previous years. So it's interesting to see whether that's been a drive for Labour or Conservative. But yeah, Battersea has been held on to by Labour.
And very quickly, before we go down to the count, a big gain here for the Conservative Party. Blackpool South, a gain with a swing of 9.3% from the Labour to the Conservative Party. You're not going to be bringing a swing on for this one because I'm not going to let you. However, that's a huge gain there for the Conservative Party. Not great news for Labour. And as it happens, we're going to go down to the count now, where Paul has Stuart Brady, the Labour candidate for Loughborough, with him there.
Hello, I am here with Stuart Brady, the Labour candidate. How have you found this election?
How have I found it? I mean, ultimately, it doesn't look like it's going to be successful for us. If it is, it'll be one of the stories of the election, or many elections, if we win here in Loughborough. But it's been good fun, and I think we've put on a really great campaign. Lots of people have worked incredibly hard, including members of your student body, many other people around Loughborough. I'm really proud of them and all the effort they've put in, and it's not wasted effort by any stretch of the imagination, because we've got the message out there that we need to change things, and things aren't great at the moment for our climate, for our young people, for people on NHS waiting lists, and for homeless people. And if I'm honest, I think the really sad thing about tonight is that those things are going to go unaddressed, because the Tories don't have a programme to address any of that. So it's been a good election. It's been difficult at times, with it being freezing cold, or as it was today, relentlessly hacking it down with rain. But yeah, I mean, I've enjoyed it on a personal level. The result is very disappointing.
Yeah, I nearly broke my umbrella getting to the polling station earlier. Do you think a winter election affects it at all, as opposed to most of them are in May, June time?
Well, it's interesting, because the knee-jerk response would be actually turnout will be much lower. But we see turnout that's pretty well the same as it was in 2017. So that hasn't affected matters greatly. I think it maybe makes it more difficult to engage with people, because when you go knocking on doors, it's dark at night, and it's not, and I think actually it's a good question insofar as I think it affects the tone of the election. You know, obviously, winter crises in the NHS, they're going to play more of a role, and we've had some NHS stories over the course of this campaign, but also, in 2017 we had lots of big outdoor rallies with Jeremy Corbyn, and if it's inclement weather, that's much more difficult. So I think it's made it more difficult for activists, but in terms of boots on the ground, knocking doors, speaking to people in Loughborough, I don't think we've ever seen this level of engagement from our activists. So I think it has changed the mood a bit, but not massively.
Because Loughborough it's a weird constituency, because you have a sort of traditionally working class town, but then a very big student population. Do you find it difficult to sort of straddle those two populations and appease them both?
I'm not appeasing anybody. We're appealing to them all. I think it's a well put question, actually, and I think your student body would do well to recognise this, that there are challenges across Loughborough which many of the students won't know about, and Loughborough's challenges are emblematic of many of the challenges that you face across the Midlands and the North. So deindustrialisation leading to casualisation of work, pay going down, pensions not really being at the level they used to be. And I think your student body would do well to recognise that. But of course you've got the student body, but you've also got quite a diverse town as well. So you can't caricature it as another deindustrialised Midlands town, because I think it's more diverse than that. And with the uni, you have lots of allied industries that do have lots of good jobs, lots for graduates and postgraduates. So it's a really interesting mix. And then of course you've got places like Sarby, Shepshed, Barrow, outside that are they're big villages. Perhaps Sarby and Shepshed are, they're places that used to have their own hosiery industries, for example, which they don't have them anymore. And you've got Quorn, which is quite well to do. So, and then you've got places like Wymeswold and Walton-on-the-Wolds and Burton-on-the-Wolds. So you've got these, they're quite affluent, kind of stereotypical Leicestershire, well-to-do places. So it is almost a cross-section of society here. And I think that makes it really interesting. And I hope students appreciate that when they come here, that it's a good place to be in terms of gaining an understanding of what the country's actually like, because you've got pretty well everything here.
And just one final question. Obviously, you did a lot of campaigning on campus. Yeah. I think I saw you outside the library when I was going to do some coursework at one point.
That's not good enough campaigning then, if you think you saw me.
Do you think that the students have really got involved in this election?
Yeah, I think they have. I mean, Loughborough, I've just asked you guys what degrees you do, and there's a lot of kind of sciencey, technology, engineering-y kind of degrees, and your sports and your business and all of those. So stereotypically not the most politicised courses that you could imagine. But I've got to say, I think turnout in the student areas is probably pretty high this time. Obviously, we hoped a lot of that would come our way, and I think a lot of it probably did. But yeah, I think that the engagement's been pretty high. But it's pretty obvious that when we had the hustings that were excellently hosted by LSU and hosted by Josh in particular, the turnout wasn't great. And I think other student bodies are much more politicised than Loughborough. One thing I'd say, and this is a bit of a message for a lot of people at Loughborough actually, is I think it's a massive danger, and I'm really grateful to the senior leadership at Loughborough that they've enabled to accommodate our campaigning on campus, because I think it's been really healthy to have that democratic conversation on campus, and that opportunity was open to every political party. So I thank them for that. But one thing I would say is that I think there's a massive danger in universities across the country of, I call it like politics stranger danger, insofar as there's almost like an allergy or a real wariness about politics. And it's not like we're the BNP, we're a mainstream political party. And I think that there's often an over tendency to just be major on political balance, and I think often that limits the amount of political debate that goes on. And I'd caution against that, because I'd like to see the student body become a bit more politicised, because I think it's healthy. And actually, if you look at how corporate interests are often represented on campus, I think they often get a lot more airtime than political interests. So if you think, for example, employers are able to come in and engage students. I know a lot of the same opportunities can be afforded to political parties, but sometimes I think there can be an overstretch in terms of sanitising campus from politics. So I've been really grateful to everybody on campus this time round that we've been able to really get on campus and engage with the students, because it's been a really fun part of the campaign.
It really has been a good student election. So thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck for the rest of the night.
Big thanks to the whole LSU team. Big thanks to Josh and the team. I think you're doing a great job up there, and I love engaging with Loughborough Uni. I think you're such a great student body, and you just have this habit of doing things really well, from the management at VC Bob's level all the way through to LSU and the rest of the student body. So keep doing what you're doing. You've all got really bright futures.
Thank you very much. That does mean a lot. Thank you. Thank you. Back to you, Josh.
Well, thank you very much. From those two there down at the count, it'll be sure to be an interesting one. We'll have the result from that, hopefully, in just over an hour's time. We have loads of news to come for you. A rumour has just been confirmed as well that Nigel Dodds, the DUP leader at Westminster, has lost his seat. Big news. We'll bring more from that and the actual gains in a second. The Conservatives have gained Burnley, they've gained Scunthorpe. They've lost Oakshall and South Perthshire to the SNP with a 7% swing from the Conservatives to the SNP. They've gained Wolverhampton North East. Labour have held Norwich South with Clive Lewis, who's a massive Momentum supporter. Loads of things have been happening at this point as well. They've also corrected a result. A ballot box had gone missing or something. In Hemel Hempstead, the Green candidate, who granted was last on the ballot paper, they've amended his count because they'd lost some votes. It's all going on.
Yeah, and there's talk that Zach Goldsmith may be in trouble in Richmond Park, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. Interesting with Burnley, Tories have gained that for the first time since 1931. So another kind of traditional seat that has been won over by the Tories in this election. And yeah, it seems to be a night of unfolding stories still.
Well, Redcar has been a Conservative gain. And it's a big swing.
Oh,
I think it's time
not again.
for the swingometer.
Oh, God.
The swingometer.
It's the highlight of the night by
This
far.
is a huge, huge swing. It's a swing of 15.5%
Is that off the
towards the
scale?
Conservatives. That is currently off the scale because 12 is about here. So it's a huge swing towards the Conservative Party in Redcar.
I will point out that the MRP poll did not predict this one. In fact, they predicted the Conservatives to be 5 points ahead of the Conservatives. This shows the MRP poll, the poll which we've been relying on and has been reasonably accurate throughout this evening, is actually inaccurate in this sense and has under-predicted how successful the Tories will be in seats like this. Labour had a majority of 9,485. They are now usurped by the Conservatives, who have a majority of 3,527. This is unprecedented. This is Redcar. You don't have a Conservative Redcar. This doesn't happen in British politics.
Yeah, Redcar is interesting because, as we know, Wales voted, not overwhelmingly, but they voted in favour of leave. And historically, kind of Redcar's definitely been in favour of a Labour candidate.
There was 68% leave. I mean,
so okay, that is quite overwhelming then.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that that is very clearly a Brexit vote, which again repeats this is the Brexit election.
But also, if issues were raised in some of the TV debates with Wales being under Labour councils, and Plaid Cymru leader Adam Price has said that it hasn't been an issue of national Tory cuts, which the Labour Party were trying to put the blame on, but rather it was the Labour councils which were, arguably responsible for decline in living standards and all sorts of things in Welsh areas. So clearly, both Brexit and maybe distaste towards Labour councillors, that this has prompted the huge swing we've seen.
Again, I'll point out, in Redcar, there has never been a Conservative MP. There has never been a Conservative MP in the history of the Redcar constituency since it was established in 1974. It was preceded by a whole bunch of boroughs, which again, as far as I can see, has not had a Conservative before. They had Lib Dems, they had Ian Swales, a Liberal Democrat from 2010 to 2015, but they've never had a Conservative.
Again, another win for the Conservatives in Yins Mon, which is Anglesey. And that's been, again, a swing of 9.7% towards the Conservative Party. That is huge. This is Wales. This is Labour heartland, and yet again, the Labour Party are being wiped off the face of the electoral map.
This is one that the poll did predict, is Ipswich. The place of Josh Thompson's birth, his homeland, has moved.
Where I reside, not my birth.
Where he resides, sorry. He's reserving judgment there about where he lives.
Ipswich has always been reflective of the national picture, and I think in our last election, 2017, it swung to Labour, but only by a majority of about 800, I think. And that was clearly representative of the momentum that Labour was seeing at the time.
But it's now a majority of 5,000.
That is a significant swing.
79, huge majority there for Tom Hunt, beating Sandy Martin, the current Labour candidate. Again, Burnley, another Conservative gain just come in. Anthony Higginbottom, a brilliant name. He has just won Burnley, beating Julie Cooper, the Labour candidate. Bishop Auckland, another Conservative gain.
West Bromwich.
9.5% swing. West Bromwich, another Conservative gain.
11.7% swing.
These are results that we're not building these up here and giving to them all in once. These are coming in real time. These are considerable Conservative wins over Labour between usually in the range between 5 and 11% swing. Well, we had the extraordinary one in Redcar with 15%. But these are unbelievable results.
You've got to think by the end of the night that Corbyn's, if he's not considering resigning, his party are going to put pressure on him.
There's definitely going to be questions raised.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of pressure on him.
It's going to be uncomfortable.
In Wales, Labour have now lost 4 seats. Only 20 constituencies have been announced and they've lost 4 seats. The Conservatives have gained 4 seats.
Yeah, but going back to Ipswich briefly, partly because I have bias there, it was interesting in the 2017 election with the Conservative sitting candidate being Ben Gummer. Now, he was slated quite heavily for perhaps being quite responsible for the 2017 Conservative manifesto, which was, slated quite heavily across party. And clearly the renewed sense of having a different candidate in, and what we've seen with the vote of Brexit, because Ipswich did vote to leave, that has clearly swung quite heavily in Conservatives' favour.
It's a changing landscape. I think this is the fact now that we are now looking at a map of Britain that we've not seen since the 1980s, and this will be and to be honest, it was even then it was very different. It was the cities, in rich affluent areas that were voting Conservative, not those like Redcar, where many people suffer in poverty and in deprivation. Traditional steel mining, steel towns and mining towns that are now moving towards Conservatives in a way we have never seen before. If Thatcher was here today looking at the map, she would not understand what is going on.
But does this show a personality contest rather than, or more than anything else, in terms of Boris Johnson having quite a significant following? And if we go back to the leadership election just for the Conservative Party, he had an overwhelming majority over Jeremy Hunt. Now, is this a result of people voting based on personality rather than perhaps other factors?
It's looking like, and they see we are currently at a point where we are around maybe a third to a quarter of constituencies that we understand the movement. It's looking like the exit poll may be an understatement of how large the Conservative majority might be this evening. Again, it's early days and we still have many, many more results to go. But it's looking like we might have issues, including in Ed Miliband's seat, where the issues only surmount bigger for Labour. With a recount in Ed Miliband's seat, could be close for him.
Yeah, and again, that's not good news for a relative quite big figurehead in the Labour Party. Of course, under his tenure as head of the party. So, yeah, it's not just affecting people or backbenchers. This is affecting, real, well-known political figures across the board.
If you are a member of the Labour Party now, whatever side of the party you come from, whether it's Momentum, whether it's whether it's a Blair right wing, what are you thinking right now? What is going through your mind?
Oh my gosh, this is not going to plan.
I think what this election is showing is that there's no longer a divide along class. I think we've now moved fully into the 21st century where class is no longer an issue that divides people in politics. It's now a lot more fluid. Again, perhaps showing like an unfreezing of our party system in the way that we know it. Maybe not necessarily with the parties themselves, but those who vote for the parties is now inconsistent in terms of traditional party lines.
I think the change of the makeup of the map as well is a significant thing. I think when you look at a political map and you look at where the constituencies are, you understand that yes, your cities, your north, are going to be Labour strongholds. The countryside, the areas where people are more affluent are going to be Conservative. This map is changing. Yeah. People in those affluent areas are remaining Conservative, and they're not changing. They may be considering Lib Dem, if they're a Remain supporting individual. But overall, people in a lot of areas up north where traditionally it wouldn't happen are having trouble there deciding which party to go for. So an important one here we'll just go to first is Twickenham. The Lib Dems have held Twickenham. This was something that wasn't sure beforehand, but we now know this as a fact. And speaking of the Lib Dems, we're now going to go down to the count where Paul is with the Liberal Democrat candidate for Loughborough.
Yes, I am here. Just gave out a sigh of relief when you just gave that last result of Lib Dem held Twickenham. How has this election been for you, do you find?
Well, I mean, obviously the result is not what we'd hoped for. And what's been great is, I mean, the campaign process has been good. I think actually, perhaps a strange thing, but all the candidates have got on really well, actually. But as you saw with Stuart and Wes and Jane, you know, we all get on very well, so that's quite nice in a way.
That's been something that's, for myself, this is the first time I've ever been to a count like this. It's been really refreshing to see people from all sides of the debate getting on well, sharing coffees together, chatting, regardless of your politics. You know, it's nice to see you all getting on like that.
Yeah, absolutely, because I mean, the negativity about politics is very corrosive, and actually on the hustings, we didn't agree this up front explicitly. We basically developed a culture of we tell the audience what we're going to do rather than point fingers at the others. So no negativity, which I think was really well received by the audience actually in all the hustings.
Yeah, definitely. So as far as Lib Dems nationwide, it's looking like your vote share is going to go up slightly. Seats is probably going to stay the same. Not really a win, not really a loss.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's bitterly disappointing compared to where we'd hoped to be. But the People's Vote campaign and the tactical voting sites have really hammered a lot of our seats, really, and particularly here. I mean, we're under a lot of pressure for our voters to vote Labour. So I think that hasn't helped us.
Yeah, that's been something that. And I know in previous elections it's been talked about a lot, but tactical voting has been something that's really been hammered home in this election. And you're saying that it's maybe not helped Lib Dem?
No, absolutely, we're certainly not in these seat like this. Yeah, we'll have to see, because obviously it's early days yet in terms of the constituencies we hold. I mean, Labour's gain of Putney with an 8% swing was very encouraging, because obviously that maybe says it's a game of two halves, if you like. Because the Tory party obviously were the undisputed party of Brexit, with Farage under great pressure from Aaron Banks capitulating in the Tory-held seats. So the Tory party and the Brexit party are essentially the same thing now. And the Remain vote was split in England between ourselves, Labour and the Green Party. So that hasn't helped at all.
Where do you think the Lib Dems will go from here, do you think?
Well, interestingly, I mean, we've had a few, the last 4 years has been tough for us. But interestingly, after every every disappointment, after the losses of 2015, our membership, increased, almost doubled. After the referendum, it increased considerably. And even after 2017, it increased again. So there is a need, I mean, the Tory party have won on a split Remain vote. But Remain is still the position the country holds, and it's the position that the younger people hold. So Europe is going to be a defining political issue for the next generation, perhaps, and the political parties are going to have to adjust in some way. I mean, there's even talk, maybe it's just talk, but there is even talk that some Labour MPs have been talking to the Lib Dems about defecting after the election. Now, we hear all sorts of things. Take that with a pinch of salt. But ultimately, I think it's been proved tonight that hard left socialism isn't what the country wants. And if we don't have a realignment, we're facing a generation of Conservative rule. And I don't think the people would just be placid and allow that to happen. So I have to hope and pray that there is a realignment of some description, so that the Remain majority can become the parliamentary majority.
Well, thank you very much. It's been very insightful, and I guess we'll see where the country goes over the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, there we go. It's been huge over the last couple of minutes during that interview. Thank you very much, Paul, for that one. However, City of London and Westminster, that has been held by the Conservatives despite a massive push by the Lib Dems to win that one. Chuka Umunna is now no longer in Parliament and will no longer sit in Westminster. Nigel Dodds has lost his seat for the DUP. The DUP leader has confirmed lost his seat in Finucane. That's gone. East Lothian, the SNP have gained that from Labour, with now a majority of 3,000. Martin Whitfield losing there to Kenny McCaskill. And on a Loughborough note, Telford is now has now remained Conservative. So there you go. You'd have been Telford. There you go.
It's a big surprise
just,
for Telford.
Just one hall. They're all by themselves.
So thank you very much for all of you here in the studio. We'll be switching over it in a few minutes' time. However, the big stuff is still to go. We have seats, including Fife North East, with a majority of 2. It's a 2-vote majority. Kensington, Perth, we've got the potential removal of a Conservative in Richmond Park. We've got Glasgow South West, Glasgow East, and seats like like Lanark and Hamilton, all coming in the next hour or so. So make sure you keep watching. We'll be back in half an hour. Although wait, Josh has got something first.
It's a really cool infographic that's just been shared about, which shows that Labour have lost percentage point, well, have seen their vote share fall in every region of the country so far. Whereas Conservatives, they've seen their vote share lost in Scotland and London at the moment, with no change in the northwest, but South East Wales, North East, East Midlands, South West and West Midlands, they have seen significant gains. Again, with the Lib Dems, interestingly, they have seen their vote share go up everywhere in the country as well. So there is quite a regional distinction going on here as well.
And finally, our final change of this hour, Eastbourne. Eastbourne has been gained from the Liberal Democrats. Stephen Lloyd loses his seat in Eastbourne. It's a big change, and there'll be more big changes going on in the next hour or so. We'll be back at 3:30. We'll see you then.